Welcome to Shaping Stories, a glass artist podcast. Here we sit down with hot glass artists from around the world to explore their creative paths, what inspires them, and the real moments that shape their work. Thank you for being here. All right. So, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. I'm Jasmine Steinacker. I am a glassblower from Asheville.
And did you grow up in Asheville?
No, originally I'm from Ridgewood, New Jersey.
Oh.
Yes,
And can we skip the glass part of your life for a minute? Can you tell me a little bit about what you enjoy outside of glass?
totally. I work out a lot. I really enjoy going to HIIT classes. That is how I spend a lot of my outside of glass time. I also cook and bake a lot. Pretty much every day I'm always cooking, so I would say that's the most time-consuming other things that I do outside of glass.
And can you tell us about how you got into glass?
Yeah, so I went to Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, and actually I went to school for photography, but we were required to take a class outside of our medium, and it still had to be in the arts. So actually, glass blowing was the last class that had an opening, and I didn't really have a choice, basically. So I picked glass, and I thought it was going to be maybe jewelry making or just, I had no idea. And then I took the first class, and basically the rest was history. So I ended up graduating with both photography and a glassblowing major.
So you continued and kept taking classes there for quite a bit.
Yes, I graduated with my bachelor's of fine arts, and it was a double major. It was definitely really difficult to do both of those, especially because glass is so time consuming. And definitely more so when you're learning it. But at that stage of where I was going through school, I couldn't stop doing my photography major unless I wanted to graduate a year later.
And did you know that you were going to really keep pursuing glass? You said you couldn't stop the photography, but did you know that glass was 100% going to be it?
I think so. I could never see myself being a photographer for magazines or just I just had a hard time imagining it, and I really enjoyed the fine art side of it, and that's mostly what I did when and I still practice photography today, but it's definitely more contemporary fine art. It's less, portraiture and things that actually you can have a living basically. And so glass was just the more natural path, I think, in the end. And when I graduated, it just kind of fell into my lap, sort of, with following through with different opportunities.
Can you talk a little bit about the kind of glass that you were making while you were in college and maybe what kind of instructors you had and how they led you in glass?
So, as far as art goes, or I guess making objects, the kind of objects is that often we had a lot of technical assignments in our intro classes. So we would have to make, as many low bowls as we could in a week, as many cups as we could, things like that, to kind of hone your technical skills. And I actually was combining my photography and glass. So I started making things to photograph, but they weren't like real objects, if you will. It wasn't like realistic representations of things in life. It was once again more just a contemporary, modern, like very amorphous forms. As far as professors go,
Were they
yeah.
kind of instructors that would come in and do a demo and then you would copy them or?
One of my professors is Jack Wax, and then the other one is Bo Yoon, or his full name is Bo Yun Yoon. And they were both great, very hot shop oriented, very hot shop focused, and both amazing without question. I definitely feel lucky that I was able to learn from them. And I think that the most like interesting lesson that I took from one of them was that they basically said once you're in glass in the real world and you're making a living, to not be clouded by money, essentially.
And so you have your hard-earned degree with photography and glass. Did you just start applying to glass places to work, or did you already know the direction you wanted to head after that?
I did not have a direction. However, Richmond is right by the Chrysler Museum of Glass. It's about an hour away. So I did the Chrysler Glass Assistantship in Norfolk, Virginia. That was a 6 month internship, and I graduated during the pandemic, so I was home not doing glass for I think it was 5 or 6 months, maybe, that we were just Zoom university. And yeah, so I that was naturally the next place for me because it was very close, and I had a side job that I was doing after school full time. And so it was perfect to just commute to the Chrysler. And it was only a few days a week as well. So, yeah.
Sad for you that you were one of those pandemic graduates. That's like such a crazy moment in the world and like sad for you.
Yeah, it feels really severely unfinished. And actually, yeah, it's funny because I am moving my stuff out of my storage unit as we speak today to just move to a different place. And I have my thesis project that is just not done, which is really it just brings everything up. It's so sad. But it's okay. We're here now.
Yeah, yeah. It's just one of those moments in history. And now you do hot shop and flame working. When did the flame working aspect get integrated into your skill set?
I started flame working after I graduated, and it was sort of an accident because, well, we were not taught flame working whatsoever. We had the facilities. So I knew nothing about it. And then I actually was getting my hair done, and my hairstylist told me she knew a glass blower, and I thought she was talking about a hot shop person. And so I went to visit the studio, and it was a flame working studio. And then just over time, one of them had left, and it seemed kind of like the perfect way to stay in glass. And so that's kind of why I started doing it, was just to keep my hands busy, even though it was like a different kind of medium. And then eventually that led to me quitting normal jobs, normal, whatever, and going into flame working full time for a few years.
What did you think about the difference between the hot shop and all the teamwork elements and then flame working when you're kind of independent and working on your own?
Yeah, I mean, I am like a serial introvert, as hard as that may be to believe based on my social media. Um, so like I really enjoyed the solidarity of it, and I really I know that hotshot people collab sometimes, but I think that a part of the flame working community is doing collaborations is how people like make community, you know? So it is solitary, more regularly, but then when people get together, then you realize that everyone is still super connected, like community, emotionally, etc.
And so you're at the Chrysler and you quit your regular people job. You're doing full-time glass, you're doing flame working. How did you get to where you are now?
Yeah, so actually the my friend who was at that flame working studio moved down to Asheville and he started working at a glass studio. And after about a year or so, he called me up and said that they needed an assistant. And I was looking to move out of Richmond. I had been there for a little while and it was cool, but I was ready to take the plunge to just move somewhere. And so he brought me down here to work at this glass studio and gallery. And I love Asheville. So it just worked out. And there's a huge community here in general. So there's a lot of different kinds of artists that you can work for. There's a lot of different kinds of studios. Some are more production based, some are more fine art based. You can pick and choose, you know, what you want to do.
Can you talk about how you spend your days now? Do you have certain days of the week you do some things versus others, or does it change seasonally or just on demand?
Yeah, so this is a really strange time because I don't know if you heard that we had a life-changing hurricane here. So my life looks very different than it did before the hurricane. I'm now working for different artists that I wasn't working for previously. One of them, I get to make my own schedule, so that is super fluid. And I teach one day a week at another studio. And then, as far as setting time aside for my own glass, I blow after hours. And I typically will take my day off is still working for myself, doing, social media editing, photography for glass, for my website, things like that.
Can you talk about how your photography is integrated into your glasswork now? And maybe does that help you with all of your social media work that you're doing too? Or do you find that maybe those skill sets don't line up the same?
I think it's so helpful that I have a background in this. Um, Not everybody has an eye for the camera. I hate to say it, but it's just true. So I feel lucky because I've always connected with doing that. Like, I actually really love Instagram. I think it's super fun to sit and edit and do all those things. And it makes editing photographs for my website a lot easier because I know, like, I have a background in Photoshop. So I would say it definitely crosses over. And it's funny because it's like, oh, now I'm doing the kind of photography that I never wanted to do for other people, but I have to do it for myself. Um, Classic.
Yeah, I was thinking that, but a photography skill set is seriously, it's so underestimated and all the different elements of being an artist.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely it's hard. It's really hard. And glass is like the hardest subject you could be photographing.
And so you're an artist and you're making work and you're teaching and but you also make these videos and they're like kind of silly but kind of real and you're really putting yourself out there. How do you get inspired by that? Do you just kind of come up with the ideas and go for it? Do you have like a backlog of ideas? Like where does all that root from?
Sometimes I do have a list of ideas. They will happen randomly when I'm driving or something like that. But other days, if I don't have it planned, like the silliness is totally not planned. It's me and my friend Jeffrey just flying by the seat of our pants. And I think that we're just, or for myself, I'm definitely a goofy person. And so being in front of the camera is very uncomfortable. And as I mentioned, I am an introvert, so it's super uncomfortable. So I think just being silly helps me cope with how awkward that I feel in front of the camera. Um, and I just like to have a good time. I think I've worked with a lot of glass blowers and it's and I used to be someone who would take it super seriously every time I blew glass, and I would be very, very upset if something didn't turn out, and it makes it unpleasant for whoever's working with you as well. And I moved past that now, and so I like to bring just a positive energy into it, and even if things aren't working out, to just not take it so seriously. Because glass is hard. It's super challenging. I mean, it's you are so focused too, so it's understandable on why we focus so heavily on it while it's happening. But I think it's really important to also have that balance of releasing the goofball inside of you and just going with the flow.
Do you ever feel a sense of imposter syndrome by like sharing so much of yourself on the internet and being so silly? My friend and I, Brene Brown, she always says you get a vulnerability hangover when you post a silly video. So my friend and I always joke that we'll post a video and then we can't check Instagram for like a whole day and then we second guess ourselves and we almost delete it over and over again. Do you feel that, or do you feel pretty strong with your platform and with yourself that you can be comfortable with it?
I I experience imposter syndrome with my glass blowing, but not necessarily the video aspect of it. um like not being cringy, if you will. I Because that's who I am. Truly, that is how I act. When you know me, I'm just being silly. So for me, it's natural and I don't second guess that part of it, but it is, worrying about the skill set and feeling qualified even though I know that I have made whatever it is before. I've seen myself make it on video before, whatever, there's evidence, but I definitely do feel like I don't know. Yeah, I definitely have imposter syndrome for sure.
What kind of stuff do you focus on when you're doing your personal blow slot times? And do you have certain inspirations or things that you're working through?
I also have a list of a lot of projects and not enough time in this life to do them. I don't have more than one blow slot currently a week right now. So typically I'm making production for my website for galleries locally here in Asheville. There's a super vibrant glass sales scene here, so I have to keep up with that demand. I'm hoping to take the plunge and get more blow time on a weekly basis because I would like to focus more of on my art because I do have a lot of plans right now.
And when you have an idea, do you draw it out? Do you just make lists? Can you visualize things in your head?
Yeah, I think mostly I probably visualize it in my head. I will do a very rudimentary sketch, usually 5 minutes before I'm gonna do it. I have been dabbling a little bit more in casting within the last 2 years, and that obviously you have more time to draw something out. So I guess depending on the medium, really. If it's hot shop related, though, yeah, I'm kind of just doing it. I think a lot about the color application beforehand, but that's like it. Yeah, not as much planning probably as I should, but
There's never enough time.
I know. Yeah.
If you're comfortable, will you talk to us a little bit about what it was like in Asheville before the disaster happened and maybe what it was like during and maybe how it seems like your life is a little bit more settled now than it was in the moment, but it still threw you off and threw everyone off. I love Asheville, so like we're all so sad about it.
Yeah. Before, I mean, it's a very vibrant tourist destination. You know, we have a lot of people who come through for the hiking aspect. I would say that's probably what drives tourists here the most. And it's really interesting. There was a lot that was about to happen for a lot of people around here, and especially in Glass. I think we were sort of just about to, whatever. Everyone feels that. Um, During it was, I mean, it's definitely one of the craziest experiences I think I will ever have, hopefully. I have previous trauma from an accident actually in the studio, which landed me in the hospital with skin grafts, etc. So that hurricane sort of tapped into this PTSD side of things that I did not even realize could be accessed again. So for me, it was really um, out of body for months. The night before was just I don't think anyone could have imagined this whatsoever. So we all were, we were worried, but not so cavalier. We knew there was going to be bad flooding somewhat in the River Arts District, and I actually had my flameworking space there. And my partner's business was also that business. So that was really, really hard to lose that. And I was able to get my torch before the flood actually hit, but everything else that I had, all of my raw glass materials and extraneous tools are gone, and I will not be able to replace them for a very long time. Um, and we were just in survival mode, like no contact with the outside world at all. It was super weird. It felt like you were in an episode of The Walking Dead. I mean, it was crazy. We walked the train tracks once the river was low enough that we could, which I think was about 3 days in. And there was just train cars that were like flopped over and completely horizontal, and like huge propane tanks, and just things like that, like strewn. It was just so surreal. And just seeing the river at the top of the bridge, I mean, 20 feet above street level, it was just insane. So I think everyone was kind of just like, we can't contact anyone. The hospitals are out of power. Like nowhere has power, nowhere has water. There's no food. All we have is each other pretty much. And my partner and I just hung out. Like that's it. There was just not much to say, really. It was super bizarre. And then after that, we left because my house still didn't have power and water for a very long time, longer because we had a tree that fell directly behind our house and destroyed our power line, like completely just destroyed it. So we were not top priority compared to the hospital. And yeah, it just didn't make sense to stay. I still live, like I always lived here. I didn't move out. I just left for the meantime because, work wasn't happening, had no safe drinking water, no power. I mean, and I was lucky enough to have enough gas in my car to leave, but a lot of people actually didn't have that as an option. And initially there was no way out either. So once we found a way out, it just was like, okay, we'll stay out for a while. And then it was kind of just damage control, waiting to hear back from FEMA, waiting to hear back from grants, getting phone calls every day about what's happening, what's updated, when is the water going to be back. I mean, that was the longest, most horrendous experience, was just having the reservoir and all the big piping system like completely destroyed. It's just not, it wasn't safe. Um, and I think it's really unfortunate because there were a lot of people who had to stay and had no other choice. So I feel, excuse me, really lucky that I got to leave. I came back for a little bit I think it was January, and that's when I started working for this other artist who I work for now. And then I have a few friends in Brooklyn, and they work at Urban Glass. So I went and worked at Urban Glass for a little while, and I didn't know if I was gonna stay here or stay there because I was commuting from my house in New Jersey. My family still lives there. And I do still feel a little between worlds about it currently because Asheville now, end of question, is much slower. There's way less tourists. I mean, things are still getting fixed. There's still buildings down the street from me that look like a tornado ripped through them. So it's just a weird place right now because I have found that a lot of people are coming because they want to support Asheville, and I don't think I think a lot it's complicated. It's a complicated feeling for locals because we just want things to be fixed and repaired and don't want to have to worry about, pressures from tourists coming because that's how Asheville was sustainable before, and now without them it's not. And I think that we all want to find a solution that makes this city sustainable without the tourists. So it's slow, it's quiet. Like the economy here is struggling. It's normal for everywhere else is normal, but like things here are very slow and it's scary. A lot of places that may have received grants to reopen and fix everything are still gonna end up closing, and that's just the really sad truth about, a disaster like this.
Hmm. Thank you for sharing. It's like, I know it's hard to talk about, and I appreciate you doing that. I think it's so important for us all to hear, you know?
Yeah, because, as you're saying on social media, it's like, oh, everything's fine, like la la la, blowing glass, but it does not feel like that a lot of the time. So, but I love this city. I mean, I moved here because the people are so nice and it's beautiful and there's a lot of glass. So, I want to be here for all of those reasons, which is why I'm still here.
And can you talk about what kind of self-care you do to get through these moments?
Yeah, I I do a lot of meditation. I use an app called Headspace. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Um, so I practice a lot of meditation. I definitely, as I mentioned earlier, exercise is really important for me. That's a great outlet. And cold working actually is super cathartic for me. So I do a lot of cold working and just kind of grind the pain away. But yeah,
Good cold workers, you know?
yeah,
Somebody has
yeah,
to fix it. Okay, bring it.
yeah. I definitely am like a healthy eater and things like that. Like I care for my body a lot. I think it's super important. So, you know, just I think, being an artist, it's harder to have a sustainable, affordable, healthy lifestyle. But I definitely prioritize that over literally everything else. So, yeah.
That must have made it even harder when you were going through that whole scenario. Harder on your body to not have all the things that you're used to
Yeah.
and no water.
Yeah.
Well, we went through all of my normal questions. I'm not sure if you have anything else that you want to talk about or if you have words of wisdom to pass on to the world.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me.
Hmm.
I am like so glad that you reached out. It's funny, I totally came across you like years ago and pretty sure when I was a glass baby. So it was when I received your email, I was so excited. I think you're awesome.
Oh,
But
thank
yeah, I would say words of wisdom, definitely don't take everything too seriously. Life, there are a lot of ebbs and flows in life and challenges that are always going to arise, but like the best thing you can do for yourself is to have a positive attitude. Um, I do a lot of mini dance parties, and I would recommend that to anyone for your confidence, for your happiness. Sometimes you go into it and you'll be in a bad mood, and then the next thing you know, you're smiling. So have more mini dance parties.
I love that.
Yeah.
And can you talk about where everyone can find you to support your work?
Yeah, totally. I have an Instagram, which is Steinacker Art, and my website is jasminesteinackerart.com, and email is jsteinackerglass@gmail.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time
Yeah, thanks so much.
and for being vulnerable.
Yeah, it's just like it's such a hard thing because you can't make people understand like truly. And when I talk about the hurricane, I always find people being like, "Oh, it's a hurricane, whatever." And I'm like, "You have no idea.
No, I
Like
can't even.
no clue."
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to Shaping Stories. If you like our podcast, please make sure to follow on whatever platform you're listening on. We are always grateful for your reviews to help other artists find us. You can find us on Shaping Stories Pod on Facebook and Instagram. And please make sure to support this artist that we interviewed today. It's a lot of guts to come on here, and we appreciate them being vulnerable and sharing, and especially for their very valuable time. If you know somebody that might like to be interviewed, or you might like to be interviewed yourself, I would love that. Please send an email over to me to dom@terrapinglass.com. I really look forward to seeing you, and I can't wait to continue with this project.